Hey, hey, hey. Happy Tuesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. This is live show number 1079. Wow. Every time I say 1000 whatever, I'm like, that's a lot of live shows. If you're not overly familiar with this live show, let me point out, super casual, just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I will usually pontificate about a topic related to our hobby. And I will be doing that tonight. I'm actually going to talk about the key tenets to the old school Renaissance. And I'm not only talking about what people consider to be OSR games. Keep that in mind. Stay tuned. You'll find out what I mean by this. Anyway, whenever you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And for some reason, I have a little hair hanging on the edge of my nose. I could see it. Not in focus, but it's like, sort of like, "Oy!" Plus it was bugging me. Kind of itching. So it's gone now. Got rid of it. Yes. Anyway, keep in mind, we're just hanging out, having fun. We are certainly not engaged in rocket surgery or anything along those lines. Now, of course, if you are watching live, there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. Yet another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. First out the gate tonight is our good friend of the show, the Madman. Roger Perdome is with us, as is Jose Fernandez, Keith Thulu, Matthew Blackwell, Kedora? I almost want to say Gira, right? But I was going to say, that is not a nickname that's ringing any bells, so it might be a first-time visit here in chat, or a second-time visit here in chat. James Eck is here, as is Kathy Evans, Rogue Thinker, and Pete's Dracolich. So we've got chat off and running already, and special appearance by Stephen from Roll for Combat, watching the All-Star Game and me at the same time. You know, I love baseball, but I have not watched the All-Star Game in a handful of years. Part of it is because I used to love when the winner of the All-Star Game was the team, was the league that actually got home field advantage in the World Series. Not anymore. When I was a kid, those two teams would go at it. Pete Rose plowing into the catcher from Oakland. Was it and I want to say it's Gene Tennis, but it wasn't Gene Tennis. It was Ray. Yeah, I was never a big Oakland A's fan. Pretty much ruined the guy's career. He was never the same after that collision at the plate. But yeah, the American League and national teams really went at it. Now it's just hanging out, having fun, which is fine, which is cool. All right, so let's jump on into the news because I've got quite a bit of it tonight. First of all, Corvus Belli is launching a new miniatures war game. I've got the dope on War Crow, though I must say it's kind of an oddball name, right? War Crow? Okay. Many legends await you as you journey through Lindworm. You'll hear tales of an ancient civilization that left its mark in stone and rock, water and wood. Myths surround the birth of various powers and cultures. All this and more can be discovered in the War Crow book. This unique volume not only delves deep into the lore and details of each nation, but also includes the complete rules of War Crow, 3 narrative scenarios, and 2 top-level painting guides to unveil the secrets of professional painting. In the 2-player introductory battle box, Winds from the North, you'll find all you need to start playing this warband game and take part in incredible adventures in an epic fantasy setting, including a selection of spectacular miniatures from 2 of the most powerful armies in the War Crow universe, Tribes from the North and the Hegemony of Imbersig. There you go, I'll say it like that. Imbersig. Not Embersig, Imbersig. Yeah. From the disciplined hegemony of Imbersig, the most cosmopolitan empire formed by humans, Astari elves and Ghent dwarves, nation of Lindworm, Hetman Dragoslav Cherergic, the Anvil, 1 Frost Fire Herald, 1 War Surgeon, 1 Bucklerman leader, and 3 Buckler men. Use your cunning and the might of your military to overcome the daunting confrontation. Fight for what you believe in. Unravel the mysteries that surround you. Defend your territory and advance the destiny of your nation. There is a short video. It's not even a minute in length, but it will give you a closer look at a lot of miniatures, which do look very impressive. There is an introductory bundle, which includes the core rulebook, the Winds from the North battle box, and that exclusive pre-release miniature you just saw, that big polar bear-looking creature. Well, you can pre-order that for 194.90 euros, because there's no 90 cents, right, in euros, so it's, is it 194.90 euros? I don't know. I don't live in Europe. Can't tell you how that would be pronounced. You could buy the core book separately. That carries an MSRP in American US dollars, $78.99. You can grab the battle box for an MSRP of $154.99. And these pre-orders are expected to arrive in September. I don't know if we will see Corvus Belli at Gen Con. If so, I'm going to see if I can get a closer look at some of these miniatures. Because as I kind of segue away from not role-playing games, board games, which there's still board game coverage here. It's just not as much as we used to do. I want to share some more miniatures stuff. So my nephew Cameron is starting to learn how to paint miniatures, and I'm going to go over there probably next month and kind of sit down for an afternoon and go over some of the various different aspects of painting miniatures. Because back in the day when I had far younger eyes, I was a pretty good miniatures painter. Not where I submitted to like Golden Demon or anything like that, but very, very good quality, like table miniatures. Although I have to admit, when I painted the 1/6 scale figures in that, those caught people's attention. Yes. All right. So we've got a few more folks popping on into chat. We've got Melwinius from York joining us once again, as is Semper Buffo. Lenny Blade is here. I will take a guess. The lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is hanging with us tonight. Another of our chat moderators. Game Cat is also popping on in. So Keith Thulu said, when I was saying that, what was it? Ember Sig. I sounded like Red Hoek. You idiot. Yeah, I remember that show. Yes, I do. Less we say about the creator, the better, though. On to our next news piece. Right now, you can pre-order the Hostile Waters box set for Twilight 2000 4th edition. And I've got the latest from Free League Publishing. I always wanted to go on a boat, before the war. When we reached the Vistula, Top said, "Now's your chance, kid." Toofer said he did some boating with his brother out on the Gulf, and I guess he meant Mexico because I don't think he ever served in the desert. I kid you not, an hour later, we were being chased by pirates, just like in the show. Bullets whizzing above my head, spray of water in my face. Worst part is, I'm getting used to this life. Hostile Waters is for the newest edition of the role-playing game classic, Twilight 2000. It's a modular expansion that includes everything you need to play in a marine environment. Hostile Waters is loosely based on the Pirates of the Vistula for the first edition of Twilight 2000, but it's designed to be used for any waterways. This expansion includes new combat and travel rules for marine environments, military watercraft, large and small, new factions for the PCs to tangle with, new plots to unravel, and new scenario sites to explore, including the USS Maine Ohio-class nuclear submarine. It also describes the two sample waterways, the Vistula River and the Goda Canal. This contains a 104-page full-color book stuffed with new rules and gaming material, 26 new encounter cards for use on rivers or lakes, 16 modular battle maps for marine environments, 6 scenario site battle maps, battle map tokens for boats and ships of various sizes, as well as a huge full-color travel map for northern Poland and southern Sweden, connecting the maps in the core role-playing game set. The PDF is available right now over at Drive-Thru RPG. You can grab it for $14.99, or you can pre-order the box set, which will include the PDF. It is slated for an August release, and that carries an MSRP of $39.99. Sweet. So we actually have 2 new releases for Twilight 2004E. I will talk about the other tomorrow. Both of them are slated for August releases. I am going to take a stab in the dark that both Hostile Waters and the release I'll be talking about tomorrow will make their first appearances at Gen Con. So looking forward to that. Good to see Twilight 2000 is still getting support. I mean, it is fairly new. It's only been around a couple of years. In fact, it was, 2 years ago that I actually had the first copy of the core box set that was in the US that I shot video of. Yes. I also will point out that you do not necessarily have to use Twilight 2000 with the setting. You could easily utilize these modern rules if you were looking for any sort of modern era, say, military-themed role-playing games. Very easy to port all of that on over. So very cool. Hostile Waters from Free League Publishing. Gleeman RX is with us, as is Chris Lundgren and Russell Higgins. Chris Lundgren says, back in the day, GDW had a starter set. Does Free League do that as well? Well, GDW, it wasn't a starter set. It was the core game that was in a box set, just like Twilight 2000. That is a box set. That is not a rule book. Well, there's a rule book, obviously, but it is a box set with decks of cards, maps. It's got tokens. So everything you need to play Twilight 2000 is in that set. Moving right along, now available in PDF from Green Ronin Publishing, is the Soul Sector sourcebook for the Expanse role-playing game. And I've got the lowdown. The Soul System, humanity's cradle. The discovery of the proto-molecule has changed everything, and tensions between Earth, Mars, and the Belt are white hot. The pressure rises as the exodus through the ring gate escalates, and war seems inevitable. Opportunities abound for shrewd crews willing to take risks. Soul System provides information on the governments, corporations, and organizations that vie for power within the star system that birthed humanity. Details on trade between the planets and stations of the solar system and beyond lie within, along with an in-depth overview of the layout, operations, and people of two of the most important locations in the belt, Tycho and Ceres stations. Soul System also offers a comprehensive guide to running planet-side stories, either as a prequel or as a campaign, as well as rules for creating and running corporations, media outlets, security firms, or religious groups that jockey for money and influence between Earth, Mars, and the Belt. Soul System explores bold new ways to tell your stories in the Expanse role-playing game. This 122-page PDF is available over at DriveThruRPG for $16.99. Very cool. So the Expanse continues to expand. So it's good to see that. Always like to see that. In fact, I believe it wasn't too long ago that Green Ronin released some PDFs. They're pretty short, but they were, if I remember correctly, I think they were focused on particular trades that characters could pursue in the world of the Expanse. I thought, oh, pretty cool. Pete Stracklich says, Green Ronin is awesome. You know, funny enough, I've never actually had any experience with them. I think years ago, I may have reached out to them and just never really heard back. So I do share news about their various different releases from time to time. I believe the last news piece I may have done was for, didn't they do a a second edition of their Fantasy Age role-playing game. I think that was it. So Melwinius is asking, well, I assume you're asking if the Expanse role-playing game uses the Age engine. And yes, to my knowledge, it does. It does use that. John Snyder is joining us in chat. Looks like chat's rocking and rolling again tonight. Very nice. Very cool. On to our next news piece. Achtung Cthulhu 2D20 D-Day, the Darkest Day, say that 5 times fast, is now making its landing into stores from Modiphius Entertainment. Here's the skinny. It is the spring of 1944, and after 5 years laboring under the yoke of oppression, Europe yearns for liberation. A vast allied army of personnel and machines is assembled on the south coast of Britain, ready to launch the greatest sea and airborne invasion in history. But the forces of the Axis Occult, Black Sun, and Nachtwolf are not ready to give up their ill-gotten gains so easily and lurk behind the mighty defenses of the Atlantic Wall, ready to sow terror and confusion to repel the invading allies. The battle to liberate Europe from their occult menace is about to be joined. Inside this combined guide and campaign book, you'll find everything you need to run D-Day missions and campaigns in the thrilling pulp world of Achtung Cthulhu. It's a comprehensive guide which contains both conventional and secret weapons, tools, and equipment employed by both sides in the struggle for Normandy, with signature vehicles like Hobart's Funnies and a brand new selection of biotech creatures, including the mighty Leviathan, spawn of the deadly deep ones. Next, take on an epic 3-part 12-episode campaign, which can be played continuously or run as individual missions. Pre-invasion, you'll report for duty in France on the home front and with an excursion to the Channel Islands. Down with the Deep Ones is a continuous 4-episode arc that sees your agents journey beneath the waves to join Cthulhu's children in the battle for an alien undersea city. Finally, you'll face the Darkest Day, 6 loosely linked missions as Nachtwolf deploys all its technological might to thwart the invasion under the helm of Professor Kraft Heimberg. Meanwhile, Black Sun Prior Albrecht Lohman plots to unleash a hellish horde from the Dreamlands to stop the invasion dead in its tracks. This full-color 208-page PDF features complete guides to D-Day with new weapons, vehicles, and creatures, an epic 3-part 12-mission campaign, once again can be run continuously or as one-offs. A wealth of original art, maps, and handouts brings this huge campaign to life. Can you thwart the combined might of Nachtwolf and Black Sun to ensure Operation Overlord's success? In remembrance, a portion of this book's profits will be donated to D-Day veterans charities. You can also donate direct to Models for Heroes. This does require the Achtung Cthulhu 2D20 core books to run. This 208-page hardcover, if you'd like to order the hardcover, with PDF, carries an MSRP of $52.95. You can grab the PDF over at DriveThruRPG right now for $21.50. Nice to see this come out in hardcover. I know I shared news about this arriving in PDF back in June, because I think, if I remember correctly, I think it hit DriveThruRPG right around the D-Day anniversary. Pretty sure. So that is the big release for Achtung Cthulhu this summer. Final news piece. Last week I mentioned the Spirit of 77 bundle of holding, and there's a new adventure collection which has arrived from Monkeyfun Studios. Here's what I know about the Greatest Hits Volume 3. 6 of your favorite Spirit of 77 adventures brought together in one softcover compilation. Uncle Stoney's Farm. It's going to be a long, strange trip with a visit to Uncle Stoney and his weird extended family up in Demdare Hills. Midnight in Mojitoville. What happens when a vampire looks at 140? He buys a Hawaiian shirt and heads to Mojitoville to look for his lost shaker of salt. The Stench Collection. Oh, wait, should say the Stench Connection. I love the smell of Spirit of 77 in the morning, especially when it takes to college fraternity parties involving wayward police detectives, little old ladies with guns, and a crate of fine-smelling aftershave. Cake or death? What makes Kung Fu better? Cupcakes. Cupcakes make Kung Fu better. So get ready to join us on a remote island where the secret fighting championship of the ages turns decidedly different. There's also For the Love of Muffy. What's worse than getting dragged into a high-profile divorce case between two adults acting like complete children? Having to protect their little baby. Sit, Muffy, sit. Good. Whatever you are. And then finally, we've got The Importance of Being Ernesto. You haven't really appreciated Oscar Wilde until you see it enacted in its original format. Luchador, or is it Lucador? I think, isn't it Luchador? Luchador Wrestling. Put on your lucha mask and come with us south of the border to see these splendor unfold. Can you dig it? You can grab this 114-page softcover with PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. If you want to just score the PDF, you can do so for $10.99. Lucador. Thank you, Keithulu. That was close. Very nice. I know last week, a few people in chat, when I was talking about the bundle of holding, I said, oh, yeah, I lived through the 70s. I don't want to go back. Well, as you can tell from these adventure descriptions, this is not a role-playing game that takes itself too seriously. That is for certain. All right, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I mentioned Drive-Thru RPG a few times. Don't forget, Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit Drive-Thru RPG or Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, by all means, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a little portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, so refreshing. And there are a few of you out there who stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang and make not so small donations, such as our good friend, the Madman, Joshua Edwards, Kevin King, and also Agile Monk. Very nice. Very nice. So thank you to all of you out there who utilize the banner ads for Drive-Thru RPG and or stop by paypal.me/thegaminggang. All right. So tonight, I am going to be discussing the key tenets of what I feel to be the old school Renaissance. Now, a lot of people out there are going to disagree with my take on the old school Renaissance. And you notice I'm not just saying OSR. And as Tessie Trekkie points out, now for the controversy, what is the OSR? No, that is not the topic tonight. It's not. The topic is talking about key tent poles that the old school Renaissance is built upon. Ha ha! So we are not looking to define OSR at all. But I did want to mention that, I don't know, is it just me? Or had the past 3 weeks been really crazy? It's sort of like, okay, so I wrap up the Thursday show, and by the time Tuesday rolls around for the next show, we're not living in the same world anymore. This is 2 weeks in a row. It's like, what the fuck? And I will tell you right now, I really do appreciate all of you joining me. It doesn't matter if you're watching live. Doesn't matter if you're watching on Memorex. Thank you so much, because this is actually almost like a bastion against the craziness outside our doors. It really is. And just the lunacy that's going on. My head's going to explode. No, not really. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So I look forward to doing the show. Now, having said that, I will be doing this week, and then I'll be at Comic-Con, and then I will be at Gen Con. So there are going to be 2 weeks without live shows. And I would try to do one a week from tonight, but because we fly to San Diego on buddy passes, so Tessie Trekkie says, or 1 inch to the left. You know what side of the aisle I'm from, but I still don't want to see that kind of shit happen. I think we're going to see that it's kind of a lone nut situation here, which strangely enough is what governments always try to push, but it's sort of what it's looking like. But we're not here to talk about that, right? Just mentioning. Cleveland RX says, many years in the future, when I think back to where I was at these times, I'll remember the gaming gang. Well, thank you. Hopefully fondly. And you're not like waking up in the middle of the night, like cold sweat, like, oh my God, I remember that show. So, and Chris Lundgren's cockatiel buddy is also watching the show with us. Hello, buddy. Anyway, so we have to fly on buddy passes. So it is possible that we're going to have to leave on Tuesday, because Comic-Con starts on Thursday, but Wednesday night is what they call preview night. So we actually get in on preview night with our press passes. Our press passes are good the entire time. So I have to leave Tuesday open because we can see these loads on these flights change like that. Trust me, I've flown on buddy passes enough times to know that 1 minute you're like, yes, I'm getting on this flight. And the next minute going, wait a second, how is it now overbooked by 3? There were just 10 open seats. What the hell happened? So there we have that. And then same kind of thing for Gen Con. Elliot and I are going down on Wednesday. If you watched last week, as I mentioned, there was an invite to a special 50th anniversary D&D presentation from Wizards of the Coast It is Wednesday afternoon from 1 to 5. And Elliot decided, hey, he wants to go to it. So we are going to be leaving, but I have to go over by his house. So that means Tuesday night, I got to load up my car with the auction stuff, go over to his house so we can load up the rental car he's getting. So no show on Tuesday night of that week. So this week, our regular 3 shows, and then it will be 2 weeks without an episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, but there will be plenty of videos because I am going to be shooting quite a bit. Plus, when I'm at Gen Con, I am going to do my best to try to get some of those interviews up same day. We'll see what we can do. Keith Lewis says they're giving serious consideration going to Gen Con next year and driving. They don't have to care if they have to drive 900 miles to get there. It's better than dealing with the airlines. Plus, if you drive, whatever you decide to buy, you can easily get back with you. There you go. There you go. Kevin King is with us in chat, says, hey, at least we can make the politics of France appear calm and collected by contrast. Yeah, isn't that weird? Madman says they become a bit of a hermit so they don't have to deal with life outside his little world. All right, so as I mentioned, tonight I am going to talk about some key tenets of the old school Renaissance. But first, it's time for a brief intermission.
The crowds are thinning out at the snack bar, folks, and there are still 3 minutes till showtime. You can easily make it for something that'll just hit the spot. How about it? Don't waste a second of refreshment time. You'll find such an appetizing assortment of refreshments at the snack bar, you won't be able to decide what to ask for first. All of your snack bar favorites are there, including fresh peanuts, hot popcorn, and candy of all kinds. And believe us, you've never eaten better hot dogs, crisper French fries, or more delicious buttered popcorn.
When that irresistible urge strikes, that urge for a candy bar, have an Almond Joy.
Don't fight the feeling for an Almond Joy bar. Life's more appealing with an Almond Joy bar. Real milk chocolate, frosted almond, tender coconut, too beautiful Almond Joys for you.
Go ahead, follow that irresistible urge to an indescribably delicious Peter Paul Almond Joy. And when you get the urge for something really crunchy,
Don't fight it, surrender to a Peter Paul almond cluster. Crunchy, crackly, chocolatey almond clusters, nice and nutty.
indescribably delicious.
How'd he get so big?
On Wilkins Coffee.
Wilkins coffee isn't that good.
Once in a while he gets an extra tidbit.
Of the Gorilla with Barbara Payton, Lon Chaney, Eamon Burr, and Tom Conway. The dramatic story of a strange curse that brought terror to a man and frenzy to a woman in love.
Do go away.
You do love me, don't you? That's all I need to know.
Well, you're standing in my way, and Dina's.
We love each other. What are you going to do about it? Did you see this animal?
Yes, I have seen the animal. It walks in his hind legs.
Like a man?
No, Like a beast that walks right command.
Oh, let's go back, Barney, please.
I'll never go back. Never.
Stop.
Go on. Why don't you shoot? You can't miss.
He walked on his hind legs. Like a man? No, he walked on his hind legs like an animal walking on its hind legs. Yes, Lon Chaney Jr. as the Policia. It's like, okay. Yeah, and figure, we had some big stars now. We had Raymond Burr. We had Dutch Connors. That's right, Mannix was in it. Funny thing is, I thought Mike Connors only went by Dutch Connors in that one science fiction movie. I guess he was in a few movies as Dutch Connors, college football star. Yes, and Raymond Burr always has like the same look on his face in like 50s and 60s movies. Later on, when he was on TV and that, I think his acting kind of evolved, but he's always got like this super intense look. Maybe he's sitting there wondering what he would look like in that woman's clothes. Yes. All righty. So tonight, I am going to talk about some key tent poles, some key tenets of what I consider to be the old school Renaissance. So if some of you who are watching think that I'm going to get into a discussion of what is the OSR, I've done that already. I've done that a couple of times. So no, we're not going to delve into the definition of the OSR because the reality is no one can agree on what is the OSR. Some people say it's old school revival, and it has to be games that are built upon the core mechanics of original Dungeons and Dragons or basic expert Dungeons and Dragons or advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then there are other folks like myself who feel OSR is the old school Renaissance, and it's more of a frame of mind than anything else. It's your approach to running a role-playing game in a old school way. So that is what tonight's show is about. I'm going to discuss 10 important aspects of old school Renaissance games. And the thing is, you can utilize any or all of these tent poles with any role-playing game you want. So if you happen to run 5e Dungeons and Dragons or play D&D or Call of Cthulhu or RuneQuest, anything, this goes for the upcoming Daggerheart. If you want to take an old school approach, here are some things that you really do want to look into as far as your approach to those games. So they're still going on about Bride of the Gorilla in chat. Russell Higgins says, I hate elves, so I can't be OSR. Sure you could. That's easy. That's Race's class. Just toss the elves out. Bye. So, one of the main tentpoles of old school Renaissance is ruling over rules. So don't get bogged down in the minutia of the rule book. It's more important to keep the action flowing, keep the action running, and just make judgment calls. So that is one of the aspects of the OSR that you hear all of the time. Rulings over rules, or ruling over rules. And I am a firm believer in that. I am not going to bring the excitement to a screeching halt at my game table so I can go look something up. So what's recommended is you just kind of go with the flow. You're the game master. You make the call. And then after that game session, you can tell your players, hey, you know what? I wasn't sure what that rule was. I will look into it. That way, next time we play, I will be familiar with it. Now, a lot of times there isn't going to be a rule which happens to correspond to that situation. Cases like that, make a mental note of how you ruled in that case, so that way in the future, that is going to be one of your rulings that you would use at the table. So you want to stay consistent with your rulings, but you don't necessarily have to get all wrapped up in every single aspect of the rules. And I always joke about grappling. It's like, okay, do we really need all these various different rules for unarmed combat? Okay, so how do we take somebody down? How do we restrain somebody? That's all I think we need. Plus, if you're looking to do damage with unarmed combat, fine. But there needs to be all these, okay, so, there's grappling, there's wrestling. It's like, come on. So Melwinius from York says they buy old role-playing game systems secondhand to add to their collection, or new OSR stuff as it's broadly compatible. Kevin King says, or play pirate board and slam some rum every time you need to make up a rule. Keith Ulis says 3.5's grappling rules are crunchier than a toffee nut bar. Next up, you need, as the game master, to be an impartial arbiter. And I firmly believe that you should be a fan of the player characters. You're rooting, not necessarily rooting for them to succeed, but you're rooting for an entertaining session of play. And you tend to have far more entertainment at the table when your characters are at least making progress in the adventure. So you want to be impartial and never let being a fan of the player characters get in the way of truthfully divining the dice. And what I mean by that, and I'm the first to point out in the, I would say, to benefit the tale, because remember, I run a lot of Call of Cthulhu. So Call of Cthulhu is not necessarily emergent play. You don't have a Call of Cthulhu adventure where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to roll on all these random tables, right? And create an adventure out of it. No. So I am the first to admit that's, as far as to keep the story rolling along, I will fudge a die roll from time to time. But if I'm not running Call of Cthulhu, I roll my dice in front of everybody. So if I'm running Call of Cthulhu, my dice rolls are, well, to be honest, I usually don't use a Game Master screen. So what I tend to do is I'm sitting at the table, and then I have an extra chair next to me. And I would normally just have like a small box top sitting there to roll my dice in. And then I will also have my adventure materials and things along those lines sitting there. So I don't tend to, be like peering over a game master screen or anything like that. But like I said, when I'm not running Call of Cthulhu, I roll the dice right out in the open, and I do not fudge dice rolls. However the dice land, that is basically what's going to happen. So once again, you want to be impartial. So that's very, very important. Although, like I said, you can hope that your players are going to do well. You really can. All right, so we've got some new folks who popped on into chat. So let's see. I said hello to John Snyder. Almost positive I did. I'm pretty sure I did. Dengar the Mighty is with us, as is Falchion Hawk and Typical DM. Falchion Hawk says they've been playing Dragonbane with all open rolls. Makes the game so much more exciting, in their opinion. Yes. I would agree with you on that. I would agree with you on that. Funny enough, playing Call of Cthulhu, normally I would hide the dice rolls just because I'll roll dice for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Just so the players around the table are wondering, what's he rolling the dice for? What's going on? What's going to happen next? So there is that. There is that. So I was talking about random tables and that. Embrace randomness. Always embrace randomness. So if you are playing a traditional OSR game, which do tend to have a lot of random tables to kind of get your, not necessarily to sit there and create the adventure for you. They're not there to dictate play. But a lot of the random tables that you find in many role-playing games, especially games that are of the OSR variety, a lot of those tables are useful to get your creative juices flowing too. So when you roll on random tables, you don't necessarily have to take the result of that roll verbatim, but you can sit there and go, oh, hey, that leads me to an idea. Very nice. So embrace randomness, but don't allow your game to descend into nonsensical lunacy. So one of the tent poles of old school Renaissance games is randomness. But you have to make sure that you toe the line, because if suddenly everything is just random, then everything is going to feel random. That there is no rhyme nor reason to what's going on in the adventure. And I will guarantee you, your players will start mentally checking out or start arguing with the game master why things don't make sense. So once again, embrace randomness. Do not be a slave to randomness, and don't let your game just suddenly become a bunch of random, nonsensical nonsense. Vaughn Moore is stopping on in, says they got their copy of Knave 2nd edition, and the tables in there are pure gold. Falchion Hawk says, I use random tables as a prep tool rather than an in-session tool, which nicely segues into my next tenet, and that is spend some time prepping your game session. That is something that is a given for the old school Renaissance. You do not run across old school Renaissance role-playing games. And Knave 2nd Edition was just brought up. Even new SR games like, say, Black Hack, which I happen to like Black Hack quite a bit, 2nd edition of that. You'll have all these random tables. But as Falchion Hawk just pointed out, they use that for prep, as a prep tool, not an at-the-table game aid. So old school Renaissance games, you want to have some prep done. And that is an important aspect of the game. Now, you don't have to be a slave to that preparation, though. So you can have an adventure that is plotted. A lot of times people say, oh, yeah, that adventure is on rails, which isn't always a bad thing, because the illusion of player agency, as far as your players go, is the same thing as player agency. So it's not unusual if your player characters go off on, just some random stretch. You're like, I wasn't planning on this at all. Indulge them. Roll with it. It's not that difficult to come full circle to bring them back to where you were heading in the first place. And when you do that, then your players will be like, wow, they'll be blown away. They'll be like, oh, I can't believe, Jeff was prepared for everything that we did. No, I wasn't. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, so Falchion Hawk says the illusion of choice. That's it. There are a lot of tricks to being a game master that, if everybody knew about, then the people who, players out there who are like, wow, yeah, I really love that game master. I think that game master is excellent. They might not be so impressed if they learned about all the various different little tips and tricks that are out there. But you should always have some sort of preparation. I will tell you that, especially with old school Renaissance role-playing games, it's never a bad idea to have an interesting published adventure. And I know there are loads and loads of folks out there who talk about, the homebrew adventures that they do and stuff like that. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. A lot of those people who talk about that, oh, yeah, it's all homebrewed, they're full of shit. They're cribbing stuff from one adventure that they've read and throwing it together with another adventure that they read. There are very, very few people out there who run an adventure campaign, doesn't matter what role-playing game it is, that it is all original material. Those game masters are few and far between. So, like I said, it's never a bad idea to have a published adventure that you pick and choose exciting set pieces from or encounters from and things like that. Now, remember, keep in mind, you don't have to be playing a game that's been branded as OSR to utilize any of these. Everything I've talked about to this point is easily applicable to 5e Dungeons & Dragons, 13th Age, 2nd edition, because I think they kickstarted that, right? I think they just did. Pretty sure. I think I shared a news piece on it. I know there's a 2nd edition of Trail of Cthulhu, which is going to be hitting Kickstarter. I'm actually going to do an interview with Pelgrane Press. I'm going to actually talk to Kenneth Haidt, which I doubt he'll remember me, but we sat and had pizza with John Zinzer from AEG about 10 years ago for a few hours. So that was kind of wild. Kind of wild. Von Moore said they put an NPC named Patches into their campaign, pulled directly from the Dark Souls video games. My players thought the reference was hilarious. Typical DM says their adventures are all home brewed, aka robbed. Kind of like mixing drinks at the fountain machine and calling it a new drink. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, also keep in mind, there are just innumerable absolute garbage adventures that are out there for sale, especially for 5e. Oh my gosh. There is just so much dreck out there. On like Drive-Thru RPG, it's staggering. Patrick Dolan is popping on Insta's YouTube, told them to watch this. They're a very occasional viewer. Well, welcome. Thanks for popping in on this occasion. Another tenet of old school Renaissance games is offering tough choices. All OSR games, regardless of mechanically, tend to focus on making difficult choices. And we've already had a Ren and Stimpy reference earlier in the show. You might remember the episode Space Madness, where there's that shiny red button that Stimpy wants to push. And the narrator's like, the shiny cherry red button. And it, of course, it's like, don't push that button. But it's like egging him on to push that button. That's what you'll find with OSR adventures. There's kind of an aspect to OSR adventures that you don't always see in more modern styled tales, because more modern style tales is all about getting all your thespian friends around the table so you can, play your roles because you weren't chosen for the Shakespeare in the Park that year, as opposed to actually sitting down and enjoying a game. So what you find is situations where the game master presents something and the players all know it's going to end badly. But there's that shiny cherry red button. It's like, so always offer tough choices. So that is something that is really big with the old school Renaissance. Also, make sure that you have more than one solution to a challenge. And don't be afraid to roll out a challenge that does not have an answer or that you have not come up with an answer to. Because I guarantee your players will. And a lot of times, you'll be very pleasantly surprised at how creative they happen to be. Now, I know something that a lot of people have already kind of commented in chat is about combat and the lethality of combat. One tenet of the old school Renaissance is most combat, in fact, a vast majority of combat should be avoidable in some way. Be it that you sneak past opponents, or you distract them, or you take a different route, you parlay with them, whatever. It's not just, oh, there you go. There's the orcs. Let's get them. And I'll tell you, I was just talking about really bad adventures that are available out there. The mark of a truly shitty adventure is, and we see this just in mind-numbing numbers for Dungeons and Dragons. And it's, here's a room. Here's what's in the room. Here's the monsters in the room. And the monsters attack. The players open the door, monsters attack. Next room, players enter the room, monsters attack. It's like, that shit gets old fast. James Spahn points out the old joke is OSR stands for oh shit, run. Dengar the Mighty's got to go put their daughter to bed. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will catch you next time. Patrick Dolan says, this is a very good point, especially by mid-level. Characters got tricks. Yes. So, give you another great example. If you're not real familiar with kind of like old adventures, and we'll use Dungeons and Dragons as an example. So if you're not overly familiar with like basic expert adventures, or more specifically, what I was more familiar with were advanced Dungeons and Dragons adventures, it was not unusual for your player characters to be carrying oil, vials of oil, or I should say flasks of oil, because that oil came in useful in so many situations. You could use the oil to oil something so it made less noise. You could use that oil to make an area slick. You could light the oil on fire. You could throw the oil and then light the oil on fire. Tons and tons of things that you could do, as James Eck points out, plus that 10-foot pole. Something in my eye. Sorry about that. So most combat in an old school Renaissance game should be avoidable, but it's also an encounter, and it's also something that even though combat is avoided, something interesting takes place. So it's not just, oh, well, we just didn't fight them. Should always be something entertaining. And once again, if you give your players an opportunity to do things other than just roll dice in combat, you might be very pleasantly surprised at how creative your players can be. Now, also have to point out, when combat erupts, it should be quick and it should be deadly. Old school Renaissance games do not have set piece battles that run hours at your game table. It just doesn't happen. And the reality is, it isn't supposed to happen in 5e D&D either. It does, but it's not designed that way. In fact, 5e D&D encounters are supposed to be designed to last 3 to 4 rounds. That's it. So you have combat erupts. It should be fast. You should be able to play through a decent sized combat where all your player characters are facing off against an opponent or more in about 15 minutes. If you got a table of 5 players, you should be able to rock through that pretty good. Always make sure, another tenet of the OSR is you don't spring combat on your players out of the blue. That your players are not caught unawares that, oh man, I did not know that there was this huge kraken and our 3rd level characters have been poking at the kraken under the waves. No, you don't set your players up like that. Good old school Renaissance tales always foreshadow. And it could be a variety of different things. And of course, you can always pull the old horror movie jump scare. Oh, it's just the cat. That's fine. But you always want to telegraph to your players that there are consequences to be, avoided, but that they're looking at something that doesn't just pop out of nowhere on them. Because especially if it's kind of a big bad or if it's a rather difficult encounter, you don't want to just be like, boing, there you go. Ha, 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 ha. Whoa, oh, you didn't know that? That wraith was there? Sorry. Oh, that banshee? Oh, did I forget to tell you about the howling? And oh, yeah, sorry. Well, okay, so the banshee attacks you. Also want to point out, combat has consequences. If there is no chance that the player characters will not survive an encounter, and this is my opinion, this is also a tenet of the old school Renaissance. If player characters cannot die, then those combat situations or those encounters carry no weight. They carry absolutely no weight. Once again, if you are just sitting around playing a storytelling game with your thespian friends, that's different. But a role-playing game, and you have characters who are going off on adventures, experiencing, wondrous magics and incredible monsters, there's got to be a chance that one or more of them could buy the farm during an adventure, because that actually helps your players focus more on the game. If they're just sitting around like, yeah, all we got to do is take a short rest, we'll all be fine, then you're not really playing a role-playing game. You're playing a storytelling game where the end of the story is already preordained. And that's kind of situation where your adventure is on rails that is not good. James Bond says, combat should be the last option, not the first. Also, in OSR dungeons, it's common reminder, combat makes a lot of noise, draws a lot of unwanted attention. Chris Lundgren says, not every encounter needs to be monsters. There needs to be riddles and such and more. Well, if we're talking like a dungeon delve, dungeon rooms every room doesn't have to contain a creature or a monster or something like that. Now, every room should have some sort of a purpose that it served at some point, that you can toss out a quick sentence in a description. Oh, okay, well, this was the larder. Oh, okay, all right. This was the pantry over here. All right, that's cool. It shouldn't just be like, oh, well, you open the door, this room is empty. Also, interactivity is very big with old school Renaissance adventures. There should always be interactivity going on and once again, it doesn't always have to be that shiny cherry red button, but you should have a few of those mixed throughout. Always make sure that it's never the players versus the game master. See, that's another old school Renaissance tenet. And yes, I do understand Gary Gygax, as a dungeon master, tended to play adversarially. Maybe not later on in life, early on in life. If he was the dungeon master, it was the players versus the dungeon master. That's why you'll notice a lot of the Gary Gygax AD&D adventures sort of have like what they like to refer to as a fun house kind of dungeon, where there really isn't a rhyme or reason to various things that are in the dungeon outside of it being an interesting set piece. So, but outside of Gary Gygax and other game masters that I've known over the years when I was far, far younger, it's never the game master versus the players. Game master should present the situation, narrate the results and consequences of players' actions and their roles. That's it. That goes back to the whole be an impartial arbiter. Root for the characters, root for your players, but play it pretty straight. And if the players just happen to be defeating every situation or challenge you've put in front of them, good for them. as long as you're not just rolling over and making everything easy for them, kudos to the players. Something else that's a big deal with the OSR is having your players describe what they're doing. This is something that it doesn't matter what I run at my game table. I have my players tell me what they are doing. Do not tell me I'm using my biology skill. No, I'm using my library use roll. See, I'm referring to Call of Cthulhu. Tell me what you're doing. All right, so we've gone to the local library and we're going through the newspaper morgue, as it would be considered, at a library, as well as a newspaper office where they would keep all the old issues. Well, I guess they're not issues of the newspaper. Old copies of newspapers. They call it a newspaper morgue. Bang. That's all I need. That's all I need. Okay, we're going to the library. Going to try to do some research about X. Perfect. Love it. Thank you. Not, yeah, I got a library use 45. 30. Ooh, the excitement. Oh, I just felt that tingle go up my spine. So that is a big deal with the old school Renaissance, is the players telling you what their character is doing. Now, they don't have to do it in character. They don't have to use voices or anything like that. But bring things to life at the table. That's one thing that I find is a real turnoff trying to run role-playing games with people who've got experience with a less than stellar dungeon master in 5e. Because for one, 5e D&D does not have an exhaustive list of skills. Those skills are pretty broad. Yet you will still see players sit there staring at their character sheet to try to figure out what is the skill that I should be using here, as opposed to just saying what my character is trying to do. If you make sure your players do that, you will find not only is everyone going to be more involved, but you'll find that they'll get more and more detailed as sessions go on. So, and then it'll just become kind of second nature. Okay, well, Thundar is going to climb up on his horse, raise his sword, and cry out, "Follow me!" Is a hell of a lot better than Thundar's got a leadership +2. I'm going to roll on that then. Dusty Trek, he's talking about Tomb of Horrors. I've mentioned this before. I don't like Tomb of Horrors. I've never been a fan of Tomb of Horrors. Are there some cool set pieces in it? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is it kind of ridiculous? And how any group of players could possibly survive that entire run intact is absolutely impossible. I'm not a big fan of the save or die. Never been a fan of that. If you want to knock out have somebody's hit points with something, hey, I am all good on that. But the save or die, no, not at all. James Bond points out, yes, I've heard this before. Tim Cass called it killing the zoo. Monsters aren't just piles of hit points waiting around to be reduced to 0 and looted. Chris Lundgren says, monsters can run away, get more monsters to help. I remember years ago, I ran a fantasy adventure. It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. I'm trying to remember what I actually used, what system, I forget. But it was like first level characters, starting characters. And they were dealing with kobolds. And they were, and it was actually from a published adventure I had used. But I really played into the whole little murder holes here and there, and they're all like scurrying all over the place and kind of like barking to each other and working as a team, because in most fantasy role-playing games, that's how kobolds work, because they are very weak. But, first level character having to take on 20 of them, that is not survivable. But it was kind of funny. And then, they would like run off to go notify other kobolds and prepare their defenses and stuff like that. So instead of it just being a cakewalk where most game masters running an adventure with weak opponents like that, it would just be a bloodbath for the kobolds. It was just the players at the end of that session, not the end of the adventure, but at the end of the session, fighting their way through these small caves that they had to hunch over to get through and stuff like that. They were pretty ragged. So another thing, of course, another tenet of the old school Renaissance is that, once again, monsters, NPCs, creatures, things along those lines that are not the player characters are not just, as already mentioned, bags of hit points. And you will find that a lot of times an OSR adventure is going to give you a little bit of backstory and motivation for the characters as well as the monsters without getting into a whole novella about why are these goblins here in this cave. You don't necessarily need to know the past 50 years of that goblin tribe. You just kind of need to know a little bit about what are they doing there? What is their game plan? Pretty much it. Chris also points out the dungeon is the monster's home. Yeah, right. They live there. You're just intruders. Your players are just intruders. Something else that's real big with the OSR is keeping the game world manageable and seen through the eyes of the characters. So this kind of goes back to the whole info dump that I tell people. Do not roll out an info dump on your players. As excited you are for that creative backstory that you put together for the big bad, your players don't need to know it. You can hint at it. In fact, it's far more interesting if you drop little clues, because then your players will sit there and go, oh, we figured it out. As opposed to, oh, yes, here, let me sit back and read 2 pages of read aloud to you. No, absolutely not. Because all that matters is, how does the game world affect the player characters? That's it. They're the stars of the show. Your NPCs are not the stars of the show. The NPCs who live in the town that the player characters are defending are not the stars of the show. It's important to keep that in mind. Plus, it makes it far easier for game masters of all experience levels to run something if they just have, bullet points about things, not sit there having to worry about every small aspect going on with the game world. And that is a huge problem. That's a big mistake that newbie game masters make, trying to plot out everything about their game world. That doesn't matter. All that matters is what's going on around your characters, and you can build from that. So a lot of folks are sharing various different tips here. Tessie Trekkie says, kobolds plus cramped caves plus murder holes plus overconfident level 10 characters equal 3 dead level 10 characters. All right, final tenet. of the old school Renaissance. And in my opinion, this is numero uno. This, to me, epitomizes what makes the old school Renaissance way different than any modern styled role-playing games, or most, I'll say, modern styled role-playing games, like, say, 5e Dungeons and Dragons, and of course, even Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is not immune from the players looking at their character sheets all game long, trying to figure out, what am I going to use for this situation, as opposed to, what is my character just trying to do? Player ingenuity is far more important than character ability. I cannot stress that enough, because once you get that through to your players, that their ingenuity, their cleverness is way more important than anything that's on their character sheet, you are going to unlock their ability to really take off in your game. If you sit there and just plot out set piece encounters where it's like, oh, well, okay, so if they use this skill and they're successful at it, this will happen, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because once again, as I had mentioned earlier on, that when you come up with challenges, you want to have multiple solutions to each challenge, and don't be shocked to not have a solution at all. Let your players create a solution for you. So there's that. Always reward clever play and thinking outside the box, even when it fails. Because what you're doing there is you're encouraging your players to take chances. And there, in my opinion, there's nothing worse than sitting at a table, because I've played a couple of games where it was someone else was the game master, and everybody at the table would just be sitting there looking at their character sheets. And it's like, okay, so, and one of the games I played, it was a first edition Pathfinder. And I've mentioned this before. I was up at Imperial Outpost, which was the only game store in the Phoenix Valley that I thought was worth a damn back when I lived out there. And it was a game day. I went out there just kind of as a favor to the owner. And he had asked, hey, Jeff, they need another player at this table. Would you play Pathfinder? I was like, yeah, okay. So I was a rogue. And it was like, so as a character, I'm thinking like as a rogue, well, what would a rogue try to do? What am I focusing? I didn't look at, oh, well, these are the feats I've got. And the other players at the table, they weren't familiar with Pathfinder, but it was the same thing. It was just like, oh, let's see. So would I use this in this situation? Oh, okay. What about that? And it probably didn't help that the game master was a pushover. But we were playing Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, which we successfully made our way through in 3 hours. Of course, that's what happened when it's like a game day, kind of like racing through various different things. But it was, an interesting way to pass the time, but it didn't go down as something that was like, wow, that was a memorable experience. No. So player ingenuity over character ability, rewarding clever play, and thinking outside the box is going to lead to memorable experiences at your game table. Because as much as people like to talk about, oh, well, you remember that time I rolled 3 20s in a row? Yeah, I remember. That's not a memorable game experience. That's a memorable experience for that player who just happened to roll 3 20s in a row, which happens more often than people might think, right? That's not something where it's like, wow, 20 years ago we played this game and it was actually Boot Hill, and we played the movie Chisholm, and it was really wild. So of course, our characters met Billy the Kid and John Chisholm, and the guy who ran it, he had actually, had created a supplement he tried to sell to TSR for Boot Hill, and they turned him down, blah, blah, blah. That's a memorable game experience. Rolling 320. 20s in a row. No. James Bond says, player agency. Never deny your players a chance to try something, even if it's absolutely horrifically dumb or has almost zero chance of success. They can try, but they have to accept the consequences. Oh, I completely agree with you. I don't say no to my players. Doesn't matter what they want to try to do. I don't say no, unless it was like, okay, so I'm going to leap up as high as I can and fly to the moon. No, that's not going to happen. But I mean, if it's something that is within the realm of possibility, and I know it's, got almost no chance of succeeding or no chance of turning out in a positive way, I will usually come back with, are you sure you want to do that? And if they say yes, I'm like, okay, all right. If you want to leap that 45 feet across that chasm, give it a whirl. Oh, okay, well, you gave it a whirl. All righty. So that is my number one tenet. Not that those were in any real sort of order as far as games which are part of the old school Renaissance. And once again, I can't stress this enough. You do not have to play an OSR game to utilize these tent poles. These are easily used with Dungeons and Dragons and Traveler and Villains and Vigilantes, Champions. Champions is a little more modern than Villains and Vigilantes, I would say. Daggerheart, anything, any modern style game, although Traveler does go way back and the mechanics really haven't changed. But you can use any of these. Once again, to me, most important, player ingenuity over character ability and rewarding clever play, out-of-the-box thinking. That, I think, is tops. Patrick Dolan says, I like to tell my players the odds are rough odds when they ask to do something dumb. Highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely that's going to happen. All right, I'm going to try it anyway. Okay. All right, so you're going to try to outrun that cheetah. With that broken leg. Carrying a 100-pound backpack. All right, highly unlikely. Give it a shot. All righty then. That is it for this time out. If you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live, took part in chat, a bigger thank you. But of course, I know a lot of you out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very kindly for taking time out to watch any of the nearly 2,000 videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. If you like this video, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my first look at The One Ring, Moria, Through the Doors of Durin from Free League Publishing, as well as my review of both the Tales of the Valiant Player's Guide and the Monster Vault. Those are very recent videos that I shared here on the channel. Yay. All righty then. Everybody enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'll be back tomorrow. And I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.